Okay. Gentlemen? All right. Okay, I would hereby like to call the Town of Kiowa Island Ways and Means Committee meeting on Wednesday, January 10th. I need to be really careful, 2024 to order. May I ask everybody to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Petra, if you want to do your magic, please.
Chairman Huntingfelder,
Here.
Mayor Labriola,
Here.
Mr. Bell,
Here.
Mr. Werner,
Here.
Mr. Wilson, Ms. Schubert.
All right. First agenda item for today is the approval of the meeting minutes for the Ways and Means Committee meeting on November 28.
Move approval of the minutes. Second.
Any discussions, questions, comments?
I just have one minor typo that I will
Okay.
provide to the clerk.
Okay. Thank you, Brad. I also submitted a few little things to Petra already, but nothing substantial, I would think. Except for one thing, though, in this one, I think, didn't we take a vote on one agenda item on November 28th that's not documented in the meeting minutes?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, my correction is incorrect. You're right. Never mind. Ignore my correction. Yes.
So on, I think on page second, is that the 28th that you're holding from me?
Yes.
I thought that there's this one agenda item where we actually did take a vote.
I will double check that and add it in.
Okay. All right. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Second topic under approval of meeting minutes, special calls, Ways and Means Committee meeting on December 19th, 2023. May I have a motion, please?
Move approval of the minutes. Second.
Any discussion, questions, comments, corrections? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good work, Petra. Thank you. Moving on to citizen comments. We don't have any citizens in the room, so there are no comments. There's also no old business. New business, review and recommendation to Town Council for approval of the 2024 off-duty deputy contract with the Charleston County Sheriff's Office. I assume, Craig, I can give you the word.
Good morning. Yes. We're up for renewal of our off-duty contract with Charleston County Sheriff Department. Just a little background. This off-duty contract actually began since around 1993. And so it's been in existence since then. 1995, town completed a study to enhance the security service to increase the manpower and hours from 6 to 10 hours to have full coverage. Between 2016 2018, roughly 2018, town administrator and the former Charleston County Sheriff Office executive staff began meeting to bring in the permanent contract, which for 24/7 coverage. As we know, June 2023, that contract was terminated. The off-duty for this contract is 2 deputies, 4 p.m. to 12 a.m., then 2 deputies from 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. We have 2 additional deputies from 8 to 4 on weekends, commending the Friday before Memorial Day and through Labor Day. The road finance director did a fiscal breakdown each year from between 2015 to 2023. For 2015 to 2016, we had 58 deputies. 2016, 2017, we had 50 deputies. 2017 to 2018, 39. 2018 to 2019, 29 deputies. 2019, 2020, 26. 2020, 2021, 24 deputies. 2021, 2022, 22. For this last fiscal year, 2022 to 2023, 18. So as you can see, the number's kind of falling, but that is because of the increase of turnover rate in law enforcement as well. So as you can see, we took a big hit 2022, 2023. And I also would like to point out 2019, 2020 was the election year for the new sheriff. So there a drastic change in that as well.
Okay, so factually, we went down from roughly 35-ish to less than 20 that are actually willing to serve. Now, when you look at the number of days served, was there a similar ratio or even more extreme ratio?
So again, thanks to DeRoder with the breakdown. First shift, when you look at the cost analysis on first shift, it was roughly $7,800, and that was 2016 first shift. First shift for 2022, first shift for 2022 was ended up being $409, and for the fiscal year 2023, $421, and that's first shift, and that's the.
Are you saying hours or dollars? This was hours.
Oh, this is
Hours.
I'm sorry.
Hours.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's the summary of hours
Yeah,
per
this is
shift.
hours. I'm sorry.
For the
So,
whole year?
Yeah, that's for 1 year. So 2016, it was 7,865 hours for first shift, and that's for first shift. And then when you look at 2022 and 23, we're at 409 hours. In 2023, it's 421 hours. That's for first shift. Second shift on,
Reagan went from 7,000 to 400?
yes, sir, hours.
Yeah, remember, so in
And-
fiscal year 16, 17, our off-duty deputy contracting covered first shift. And then remember, we went to the permanent deputy, so that's why you see the drop,
Yeah.
because we went to permanent.
So maybe you just focus on the last 3 years is maybe.
Okay.
So
Right.
before or with the contract that now was canceled, so maybe that's a better apple-to-apple
Or,
comparison.
or though,
This the, you remember, they also went to the 11th district, so,
well, also I want to point out too that we can show you on the first shift, but remember the second and third shift, that was not under contract. So if he gives you the numbers, that is apples to apples for second and third shift. So from fiscal year 16 to 23, he can give you those numbers for second and third shift.
True, that's
Yeah.
correct, yes, exactly. Thank you. So we have a similar or even more drastic development, obviously, not only that the number of police officers that were willing to work for us in off-duty went down by 50%, but it sounds like, the hours that they spent went down even more dramatically? Okay. So last year, so how many hours were spent on second shift, for example?
so second shift, last year, it was 3,968 hours.
I'm sorry, say it
2023,
again, 3,000?
yeah, 3,968 hours for first shift. Second shift. And second shift on 2023, 3,665.
So that's basically almost full-time for two people.
Yeah. Yes.
But I'm saying the actual, but we actually got, we got virtually full-time coverage, at least at 39. You think 4,000 hours is
No, not exactly.
not exactly.
I mean, it's 6,000 hours for the whole year for one shift, so they worked like a little bit
40%.
more over half.
I mean,
let's say.
60%, 60,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay.
So, that's right, that's for 7 days a week. I was looking at 5 days a week. Okay,
No, you have to
yeah.
Yeah,
do
7 days, you're right.
365.
You're right, 7 days a week. You're right.
times 8
days.
hours times 2.
So-
That's almost 6,000 hours.
But if I can point out, and I know Craig would point out, was that our second shift in 2016, we had a summary of 10,035 hours. 2013, this current fiscal year, we're at 3,600.
Yeah.
So there's been a significant drop in number of hours.
And like I said, the drop is, when you look at it, and I can definitely give you guys a copy, the drop is very significant during the change of power. Because once in 2020, it was 5,056 hours. And then the numbers started to drop since then.
So, but that's what I said earlier. Not only have we lost 50% of officers that are willing to work for us off duty, but even their ability to serve us dropped by 70%
Yes.
in second and third shift. Just rough numbers. I just want to get a feel. I mean, it's not
yes.
changing what you're putting in
Right.
front of us, but I wanted to have a context, because I would assume that at some point in the coming months, we will have a discussion about,
Oh, yes.
you know, your proposal to investigate if we want our own police department. And I think those numbers speak their language. That's
So that
why-
means there's some days or shifts that we do not have coverage?
Correct.
So there are,
I would say-
So there are some days or shifts
Let me
we-
say this, when we say coverage,
Right.
that means we don't have a deputy 24/7 out.
Right,
That
that's-
doesn't mean that they don't patrol at all. I mean,
I understand, I understand.
But, yeah,
but what the numbers are telling me then is from what Mr. Heidensfelder was saying, it gives me the impression there are some shifts where nobody's here.
Or we have shifts where our enhanced service that we pay for, there's no one here. But again, we have to be careful from a public recording standpoint. We have, there is deputy coverage. If someone calls 911, someone will
understand.
come. But yes, through our contract, we have no one. Through the enhanced services that we pay for, we don't have anyone to fulfill our
But we're not paying
contract.
for them if they're not here.
Say that one more time? Correct, because they're hourly.
they're not
Yeah,
here.
they have to clock
They
in.
have
So
to
per our
sign up.
contract, and that's why you'll hear during the budget process, we're going to recommend a reduction because we don't have as many deputies fulfilling the hours of our contract.
And that's just simply a function of the fact that we put in the request to the coordinator, I guess, I mean.
No, so we'll go through this. So the process, if you want to go through, so the process is that our coordinator essentially tries to fill the schedule. We don't put requests in, they know our contract. They have where they try to fulfill the schedule, the hours, and if off-duty deputy, if they have no one to apply, there's no one to fill that shift.
So this contract, or do we need to approve this before we start asking questions? Do we need to go to a vote?
Yes, that would be great if you guys are going to go into a discussion about it.
My fault. Can I
Okay.
have a motion, please?
Let's,
To approve the recommendation, or make the recommendation to town council to approve the off-duty deputy contract.
all right, so moved.
Second.
All right, so discussions. Okay, there's a couple of things that coalesced in the last 30 seconds. So on one hand, I'm hearing that we have a very big shortfall of hours, but yet, under Article 1 of this contract, it says we're going to be getting 43 hours per week per deputy. Is that actually realistic?
No, so the contract, yeah, we have that, but again, it is all based on if they have the availability. So this, we would like to see this, but they, if they don't have the availability, then, and no deputy signs up, then no, we don't get it. That's why we were budgeting in the past, only, I think, 70% of the contract for off-duty. But now it's going to drop down even further.
Well, I understand. It's just that the word, this is a contract.
Right.
And the wording says a normal work week shall be equivalent of 43 hours a week.
So that was before, we had issues with overtime, and the issues, so that's why it's clearly stated after 43 hours, because the police force has a different, requirement for overtime, so that's why it's kind of what.
So-
Well, but we're
But it's-
demanding 43 hours a week. but
We're
they're
not really
gonna-
demanding 43 hours, we're just telling them.
We are paying
Yeah.
$40 per hour for a deputy under this regime, as long as he has not fulfilled yet his work week requirements, because he might not have been scheduled to work actually officially for the police department. So he has some times left, he wants to do the extra money, we pay $40. If he is already above his 43 hours a week and still wants to work another 5 hours or another 8-hour shift for us, we pay $50 per hour. Is that correct?
All right, so is this?
That is only, that area there is really just to deal with overtime.
I'm not looking at
Councilmember
the
Berner.
hourly rate, so I have to back up for a moment. So there's a couple things that are confusing to me. So you go to the top of the contract, it talks about what we need. We need 2 deputies first shift, 2 deputies second shift, 2 deputies third shift. Okay. Then you get down to Article 1. It talks about the contract requires deputies stated above 1, 2, and 3 shifts, but then it says in words, for only 2 shifts per day. Okay. All right, so what's it going to be changed to?
3.
3, okay.
It's oddly written, because if you do read this, it seems like their contractual obligation
Right,
is actually
exactly.
to provide these people this amount of time. That's the way it's drafted.
Agreed.
I understand that what it really should be saying is, whoever will use reasonable best efforts to schedule deputies as they are available.
Right, and the first one really was dealing with just the overtime and hours. So we were trying to say that essentially, this is, before the overtime kicks in for the town is 43. So the first section really was trying to deal with how we pay them in terms of overtime. We were trying to highlight that. But yes, this is an off-duty deputy contract. We cannot guarantee that anyone's going to sign up. So we
But
can,
again, it's 40 hours as long as it's within his work week.
40.
It's 50 hours if he's above his work week, and it's 60 hours during certain holidays. That's my understanding.
Well, and I just want to clarify one thing in that regard. Is it the one deputy that works more than 40, or can they have 2 or 3 different deputies fill the 40 and then go past
I think it's
the
one
40?
deputy. Yeah, it's one deputy. So just remember, they're essentially working, obviously picking up shifts, so it's per deputy. But I think before in the past, we were having deputies that were working maybe 60 hours, and then we had to clarify for us, when does that overtime kick in? So that was paragraph 1.
So let me just clarify, because I want to understand how it works. There are 7 8-hour second shifts, second shift, 8-hour shifts during the week. So you're saying that it's just one deputy that's picking up one of those shifts, as opposed to it could be half a dozen different deputies signing up for that, putting in for those shifts. So we could have 6 different, 8
Yeah,
different,
we could,
18.
yeah, we could, and that's what, and one of the things why we moved to a permanent deputy contract, not only because we were having a hard, CCSO at the time was having a hard time filling the first shift, we wanted some consistency, we wanted to essentially have a deputy that knows the island and people know them. But yes, based on the off-duty deputy contract, we can have Joe Smith today and Nancy Smith tomorrow.
And so I guess, how's it actually played out? Has it been the case that you actually have one deputy that's signing up for 5 shift, more than 5 shifts?
Historically, we had that.
We have, okay.
And the
That's where
concern was
triggers
that they were
the-
overworking, and
That's
the
where-
the sheriff's office, when they realized that, they essentially tried to address it so that we didn't have deputies that were doing their regular job, and then they came over and worked a third shift, because the concern was that they're working third shift, but really are they working third shift?
Michael, just a comment to Deruta, but to the point, probably not unusual here, people could work their vacation week. They could take a week's vacation at the sheriff's office. What would be very helpful, because it does get a little bit confusing, is to look at, kind of trend out if you can, hours, coverage, and the economic impact. Maybe go back a period of time, because things did change. They changed, prior to the permanent contract, post the decision that the sheriff made in terms of terminating the contract, et cetera. But I think being able to see that in a trend line would be.
I can put this together
Yeah.
so they sit down
Yeah.
and just.
That would be
Oh,
helpful.
aren't you?
So, okay, so
Is
now,
that, did I do that the way you wanted me to do it? Did I do? Jeez, oh Pete, okay, yeah,
Okay.
this is it. This is what you got. I mean, this is, yeah, I'm just looking at it quickly, but this is very, very helpful.
right,
Yeah.
but it shows that, coverage is going down.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I wanted to establish.
But the
So-
dollars, I'm sorry, but the dollars aren't there. And, Well, what,
Cost, what we pay, what it cost us.
yes, and it's not even so much the budget in terms of the positive variance to the budget because we budgeted at a higher level or an anticipated level, but just the actual dollars themselves.
So,
Jeez, oh, Pete, jeez.
not that this is the smartest question because I negotiate against ourselves, but if we would increase the hourly rate, from your point of view, Craig, would that stimulate more officers to work for us off duty?
Honestly, no.
No.
And if I can add,
It's a lot have to do with the distance that you also have to travel from work to home and so forth.
There has to be some
and
number,
also-
because if we offered $100 an hour, we would have more people coming here than
Probably
we.
have all the other agencies want
Right.
to come.
So,
some
I mean,
here.
Well, that's why,
but you got
that's why I'm
also-
getting to, because I think some of the decline might have also to do with the fact that at least for quite some time, not so much anymore right now, but it was a more costly effort to get here, given the gas prices.
I would, if I
So-
can just add a little bit of thing as well, is that yes, the dollar amount could help, but what we saw in terms of decline was because of how we had handled insurance. It became, the town became aware historically, the deputies were, we pay into their retirement, the off-duty deputies. When we started this contract, we really didn't know. We were paying essentially into their South Carolina state retirement. Deputies is on a police retirement through the state, and then there's this South Carolina state that employees are on. We discovered last year that it was an error. It was considered double dipping for the deputies. It was a big, huge ordeal. We were getting FOIA by deputies. They were upset with us. We had to switch them all to the police. And because of that, we lost a number of deputies because they said, we don't want you all to pay into the state retirement. We want it to the police. And we said, people won't allow us to do that. So we lost a number of deputies because of that. So it was there was a number of reasons, but I think, yeah, if we add more cost, we would see how many more people would jump in. We probably could have some more that jump on board.
I would like to know what West Ashley, for example, has in their hourly rate, just to know. I'm just as an example, if West Ashley is
That's the city
charging,
of Charleston. They don't have their own police.
pick
City of
your
Charleston.
town that's not on an
Yeah.
an
CCSO.
island. So if the other location, West Ashley, downtown Charleston, whoever it happens to be, is offering $40 an hour, the same as we're offering, where do you think that person is going to go? He's going to go to a closer location.
Well, so the city of Charleston, as you recall, so this is like kind of apples to oranges. So city of Charleston, there's their full-time, they work for them. This is not an off-duty
I
deputy
understand the
contract.
point I'm trying to make. We need to know what the other towns
Right.
are offering.
Other municipalities that don't have their own police
Police,
forces
right.
contract with
pay for the
county sheriff's
right.
office.
Yeah, we
Right.
want to know if we are competitive or if we are pricing ourselves out of the market,
I would
so
give
to
it as-
speak,
as an
because
ex-
we're not paying enough.
Right, and we can look into
look
that.
at-
I would just say, you know, like those, the city, James Island, they have
They
their
contract
own
the county.
police, and they use the county?
They contract with the
County.
county, yes.
They
One dep-
pulled, I know their rate is the same as ours because we've given them our contract. But we can look at some other jurisdictions and see whoever uses CCSO for off-duty deputy, how much they pay per hour.
Well, I would have no issue paying more than James Island or others because I recognize that we have extra challenges in bringing them here. So if we need to pay a slightly above market rate in order to attract the necessary services, that seems reasonable. And also, Stephanie, the point you made about the insurance, that can't have been unique to us.
Well, what happened was, a lot of other jurisdictions were doing them as 1099. We were paying them as employees.
So that's what, I mean, I would think.
And then they don't wanna
I
do
think all- I
1099s.
think they would have to be 1099.
They don't have to be. We can pay them as employees, but we have to pay into their police retirement and not the state retirement. Or we can 1099 them.
Aren't they independent contractors? Isn't that a 1099 relationship? It's not an employee relationship?
We could have 1099 them, but the issue historically at the time was that jurisdictions were having a hard time getting them because they don't want to be 1099. So the town, we said, okay, we're going to go ahead and pay through your retirement, et cetera. So we were able to get a number of them because of that. Now, since we found out that we could still pay in their retirement, but we have to pay into police retirement, a number of them dropped out. because they liked the fact that they were paying into two separate retirements.
Again, is that a state issue, so that would be true at any jurisdiction?
In terms of, yeah, so if any jurisdiction want to pay into their state retirement, they have to pay into their police. But any jurisdiction have a choice. They can pay their retirement, or they can say to them, no, we're going to do the 1099. I would have to look and see, as we're talking about other jurisdictions, if any other jurisdiction is paying in their state retirement, or if they're just treating them as a 1099.
Yeah.
I don't know that, what other jurisdictions are doing.
So I would propose that we go forward with this, but give the task to the team to give us more benchmarking data so that this could come back here if we think that increasing the rate would increase the coverage of police force on the island.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Stephanie, when did we
Didn't
go,
want that.
when did we go to, there's a relative level of consistency, 16, 17, and 18. There's a relative level of consistency, 20, 21, 22, and 23. It's 19 where it really begins to drop. Is that when we went to the
Yeah, what's it, 19? Yeah.
19? So all things being equal, just looking at this, 3 years at the low 20,000 rate, 4 years at the 7,000 rate, but it's really, that drop is when we brought on our own force. It just shows the impact of that contract that we had with the, we really
And that was
relied
for
on
first shift.
first year.
And how long has the rate been, I'm sorry, go ahead.
These guys come in uniform, don't they?
Yes.
Armed, uniformed, the whole
Correct.
business. What do they drive?
They drive the
The
county vehicle. They don't drive their personal car here.
Because we don't have it, we don't,
Right.
they drive the county, and that's okay with the sheriff?
But we pay
Well,
$10
they're
for
off,
that.
Yes.
they're off duty.
Yeah, but I'm still, that's,
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, because
Okay.
they're still sheriff's office. Yeah, deputies are just working off duty.
yeah,
We-
yeah.
But Mayor, we pay $10 per deputy per shift for vehicle and equipment usage. So, but that we are paying to the county. Yeah.
Correct.
Just out of curiosity, it doesn't mean anything in the contract. How do you calculate 43 hours a week?
I'm sorry, so this is just a law, the labor law, 43. And normally it's 40 hours for a full-time employee, but for the police force is 43 hours. So this is just a.
That's labor law, you were saying?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay.
How long has the rate been $40?
Did we change that like a couple of years ago, three
Three
years ago?
years.
Yeah, I think it went up, I think maybe 3 years ago.
We went from 25 to 40.
So
What?
I guess it went up before this mayor, so maybe 3 or 4 years ago it went up.
So when it went, at the same time, it went up from 25 to 40, which is not a substantial increase, is exactly when the usage dropped off? That's kind of, it seems.
It's not the usage, it's the fact that we started having our own full-time deputies.
Well, that and a couple of things, that, and I think the fact was that the number of deputies available started dropping. The sheriff's office just didn't have enough, so there just wasn't enough to come and fill these shifts.
Okay, so I would recommend that we continue with other questions if you may have, but wait for more data to be put in front of us to make a decision if we want to increase the rate or not. Any other questions?
Just on number 3, I mean, we've had this issue before, and I don't know whether the county is willing to provide the kind of information that we want, but I notice it says that that what they're only required to provide is the average response time rather than the actual response time. I would like to see actual response time in there rather.
Well, I actually want to see data at all. I think Greg is struggling actually
Yeah.
because they are not fulfilling that requirement.
Correct,
That's
correct.
the other topic that I wanted to bring up. I mean, if we re-sign this contract, what gives us, confidence that they will restart providing monthly activity reports to us? Which my understanding was, Greg, they are not.
They're not, right.
So what is your confidence that they will fulfill paragraph 3 of this contract?
That's in due time. I really can't answer that right now because that's something that I am constantly still working on.
Because that in Verbindung with paragraph 2, we are paying a coordinator $35 per hour Which I first of all don't understand because he or she is there already. Why are we paying extra? And then this coordinator is not fulfilling his duties. So why have we paid, for example, in the last 12 months, the coordinator, the 35 hours, $35 per hour when he or she is not fulfilling his or her duty?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. The coordinator, what their role or what they're doing now, and Craig can better answer this, is that they are just managing the schedule, filling the schedules. And yes, I think now Lieutenant Brokaw, if he still is the one that you're working with, I do see that he is sending a little bit more emails, but he is nowhere near at the level when I started in terms of the coordinator. We used to get a lot more from back in 2015 when I started as opposed to today. But the coordinator's role essentially is to coordinate the schedule.
So I assume the amount that we have paid for the coordinator has gone down commensurately with the decline in the,
Because the coordinator was essentially based on just a flat monthly fee.
Well, this is by hour, not,
it says by hour.
Well,
It was by hour, but then we figured out not to exceed 18.2, and so we figured out what that cost would be monthly.
So we're now
then-
paying him $1,500 per month as a flat rate? But that's
So
not
then-
what is in the contract.
yeah, then we need to say that.
Well, the $32, the 35 per hour, and we calculated with that, what that is. When we did the contract, it was, I guess, discussed that that was essentially not to exceed 18.2 was going to be a flat hour. We was just pointing out in the contract what the 18,200, what that, because I think the previous council wanted to see what that was hourly. So we then backed it up and say, okay, we're not going to exceed 18,200. That equates to $35 per hour. But he's not literally paying per hour. We were just showing that because I think it was asked of us. Previous council asked us to
Well,
show
I mean,
it.
certainly, again, an issue with the contract, it reads as it's an hourly rate, and we're only paying
I
him.
I understand now. I'm just saying historically, that council knew what they wanted, so we did that. But we can change that and just say at a flat rate
Yeah,
of
it needs to be changed to
1,500,
a
not
fee.
to exceed 18.2.
The idea that when we don't actually have anybody here on site, they can't find anybody, so therefore he's not doing any coordinating. that
Well, I
we're-
guess in their mind, they're still working, even though they may not have someone sign up, that they're still trying to coordinate the schedule for us. But that's just, I'm guessing why they're trying to, what they would say to justify. But if we want to, again, adjust that rate or say that the coordinator will have to clock in, and that's what we were, essentially historically it's hard to track, but say the coordinator would have to essentially log their hours, and we go to an hourly rate. So if they say that they're trying to find someone to work on the island, but they have no one, but they couldn't find anyone, and they may say we worked 5 hours to do it, we can have them clock in and show
No,
5
I
hours.
mean, I would have no problem with the $1,500 per month, but then this coordinator needs to perform his or her job.
Mm-hmm.
And beside, coordinating, the police, officers, and means finding people that are willing to work. And
Right.
I understand that this is work that you often don't see, because even if nobody is willing to work, he has probably looked for somebody.
Right.
So I understand that.
But the
But he
reports-
is not fulfilling the report.
Yeah, and so is the coordinator, it's a full-time coordination role at the CCSO?
No,
No.
So what is their full-time? They're just a deputy, and they're just a regular deputy, and this is just a little sidelight thing that they're doing?
correct.
At all 3 shifts, or?
Yeah, well, now it's all
Now
three.
it's
It's
all
going
three.
back to all 3 shifts, but before, when we had the full-time, it was 2 shifts because our permanent deputy contract, we had a separate coordinator for that. And so this coordinator, Lieutenant Brokaw, is just coordinating the off-duty deputy contracts. But yes, he has other roles, just like the off-duty deputies that work for the town have other roles. He has other roles, and we're paying him to essentially coordinate our off-duty deputy contract.
Maybe this is just too aspirational, but if there were somebody that was sitting in the Charleston County Sheriff's Office who's saying, I haven't been able to get you one of your deputies for this shift, but what we've done is we'll make sure that one of our other regular deputies is actually going to be on Seabrook and Kiowa during the next 8 hours.
I would say that's very inspirational.
Okay.
Considering that they have a hard time right now, probably filling the District 11.
Correct.
This is a supplier of services that they say is uncooperative, less than desirable in terms of being a supplier of services, all of the above. It's what we want to do is alternatives. We've gone down different paths with different alternatives, and we can continue to have this discussion, but at some point, it's a matter of looking at alternatives. Changing the rate, changing the coordinator, all of those things. All of those can be explored, but all of those have been explored. And we keep coming back to the fact, if we can't control safety on this island, we're at the, other than an election, and she comes up for this year. So
November.
That could be something that would change, could be.
Could be.
So-
But also remember, that's 4 years. It could be another person after that. You just don't know.
Absolutely, Craig, absolutely.
Okay,
I do
so-
believe in market incentives, so I think at some point, we need to think about.
Yeah,
So let's get the data, first of all, and decide then, maybe in February, if we have to raise the rate. If it's, justified to do that, and then see what happens. That this is only a temporary fix, and that's, I think, what the mayor was alluding to, is also my opinion, because we have the responsibility to guarantee a proper, police coverage for our residents. And when you look at the response times, and I have some data that I wanted to mention again in the town council meeting, it's just unacceptable, right? But in the meanwhile, we might need to raise, but I would come back to, if there are no further questions, to say we approve as proposed, but we give the task to Greg and the team to see if there is evidence for us to believe that with a raised hourly rate per deputy for these different shifts, or maybe different hourly rates per shift, because for a night shift is, of higher value, I don't know. But come back to us with a proposal that would hopefully bring us a better coverage in the meanwhile. Is that acceptable?
It is to me.
Can we have a vote? Are we agreeing on the motion as presented?
Yes.
Can I have a final vote, please?
All in
Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that was a little bit more complicated than expected, but helpful. Thank you, Craig. All right, moving on to Chairman's report. I don't have anything to add. Let's move on then to the next chapter, Treasurer's report. Dorota, if you would please help us through these two topics, the monthly budget report and then the budget mid-year review.
yes, and I thought it would be better to start with the monthly budget report, because then you'll see the actual performance of our actual expenses to the budget, and then we'll move to the budget review. So as of December 31, our combined fund balance was about 36.2 million, which is an increase of 1.6 million when compared to the beginning of the year. Of that amount, about 20 million is unrestricted. It's can be spent up to the council discretion. We have about 8.2 million in capital fund that is designated for future capital projects, beach renourishment, and emergency funding, and the rest is in restricted funds, restricted pretty much for tourism-related expenditures.
And that additional, I guess would be approximately $8 million is monies that would need to be expended on those allowed purposes in the
That's
next 2
correct.
years?
Well, not necessarily. Of this amount, about 2 million is state accommodation tax.
Okay.
So that's a restriction of 2 years. The rest is county and local accommodation and hospitality. However, still spent on tourism-related or for tourism or safety for tourism.
Question, I looked at this and I don't recall, do local accommodations tax and the county line up with the state accommodations tax in terms of how it's defined as tourism-related, or are they different definitions?
Yes, no, they define the same way, just the state is the most restrictive as it has its own overseen committee, but they still pretty much the same definition of tourism. And so that's the balance sheet. So when we look at the P&L that Petra is just pulling up,
Which one you want?
that one. Yeah, that's what you have.
Okay, I just gotta get it on here. Give me just a second.
Okay, so for the first 6 months, we collected about 6.7 million in revenues. When you look at the revenues comparing to last year, through the first 6 months, they are pretty much comparable except for 2 items or 3 items: the building permits from special projects, and interest income. So the building permits from special projects, we budgeted only for one phase of the Beach Walker, but it has been permitted for all phases. So that's why, therefore, there is this big variance, positive variance. And the interest income is related to much higher rate of return that is offered by LGIP through this year than was last year.
Business licenses are way down.
sorry?
Expressed
Yeah.
as a percentage, is that because they don't start coming in until now?
It's the timing. Yeah,
Okay.
it's the timing. So last year was the first year when we switched or changed the licensing year. But now we're going to see the renewal season start February 1st, and that's where we're going to see the money. So you'll see the most money coming pretty much in April. That's the end of the
Yeah, that's
renewal
what I thought.
season.
Okay,
Yes.
just wanted to check.
So I feel pretty comfortable that we will be within the budget with other revenues, except those 2 that will be over the budget.
DeRuda, in terms of interest income, the rate is obvious. The instrument is the same, isn't it? Nothing has changed relative to the
No,
instrument. It
nothing
is-
has changed, but there is an additional one item that, and thank you, Mayor, for reminding me. So we, in the budget, we put a placeholder of 5 million for the Beach Walker project. Beach Walker project, we call it, possibly buying a MSO, and not knowing when it is, I didn't budget this 5 million sitting in an investment account. I thought we'll buy this in, beginning of the year. So we have additional 5 million invested that
Right.
I wasn't budgeting for.
Right.
So that's another factor that the income is under. So
So when you state here in the 3rd paragraph that we have reached 46% of the total budgeted revenues by the end of December, but the comparison to what is budgeted is just by equal month, I would assume, right?
Yes.
It does not take into account that for
season
business licenses and short-term rental, I believe.
franchise fees, for
or
example.
franchise fees, is that there is such a timing issue. So
Yes.
factually, we are actually probably better,
Yes.
much better than the 46 suggests, because some of our revenue only comes in March and April.
That is correct,
Got it.
yes.
Since most municipalities probably are doing okay, post-virus, is there a discussion with your group in Lansing, in Columbia, relative to easing on some of the restrictions in terms of the investment instruments themselves? Is it the same conservative, ultra-conservative approaches still prevail?
It's a state law. I haven't heard any.
No one's talking about it?
Yeah, I haven't really heard any discussion
Has such a
about.
huge impact. I mean, just,
Well, because we one of few that have such a reserves that make money. Normally, the towns struggle to actually balance the budget. So
really? I would think Olive Palms,
yeah, no, I'm
Seabrook.
not saying we're the only one.
Oh, statewide, yeah, yeah, okay.
But I think in that context, Mayor, I think we also need to understand that we can be a lot more creative, although that's maybe a misleading word, but we can find appropriate ways to spend some of these restricted monies.
yeah, I'm not even-
right?
yeah.
So far, historically, we've been very narrow. We've given money, for example, SATAX to the resort and to Fresh Fields and to Endel Inn, et cetera.
To the town.
And some actually to the Beach Patrol, et cetera, last year to a great extent. But I think there are other areas where we can cleanly justify that they serve tourism, that they serve our guests, et cetera, and cover some of the costs
So
we have.
apropos of that, and following on a good conversation that occurred during the community drop-in earlier that Councilmember Heidingsfelder and I hosted, which actually a number of conversations, I'm looking at one of the permitted uses, which is the criminal justice system, law enforcement, fire protection, solid waste collection, and health facilities when required to serve tourists in tourist facilities. I'm thinking that when we EMS, which is $1 million a year, Michael, you'd indicated, that would be potentially an allowed expenditure. Now, it has to be
least a
based on.
portion of it,
A portion of it. It has to be based on an estimated percentage cost directly attributed to tourists, but you could say the overall population of the island at any given point in time.
And we already
is-
use a percentage that we have to justify because of our deputy in Beach Patrol. We use 70% right now as a number.
Okay, so that would be a tourism-related expenditure that would be permitted under the accommodations tax guidelines.
So that's why I at least look at these restrictions a little bit less concerned. I think there's good stuff we can do with this for the entire community and our guests. So, okay, Dorota, I'm sorry. If you
Okay,
wanna
so,
continue,
so
please.
the revenues look good. And we'll move to the expenditures. And so with 50% of the year lapsed, we spent 5.1 million, which is about 4% or 200,000 more than we spent last year through this first 6 months. And this is about 30% of the current year budget. So the majority of expenditures are within the budget, and but there are some items that will have a negative variance, and this variance will continue through the year. First is the personal cost, and this is related to approval of 2 positions for the wildlife technician and community service person.
This shows it under budget, though.
Well, so it show, but
No, I'm saying
those
it-
people have, yes,
But it says it's only 47%.
at
so
the
you're-
moment, but those 2 positions were just hired. One hasn't even started yet.
Correct.
And one was just hired in December. So their salaries are not in it yet. And we budgeted the raises for the staff, and it's broken down to 12 months. So you don't see the 50% yet. Even though, but in a budget, for example, we had 7% increase for a number for raises. And it's broken down by 12 months, not in the first month.
So
if that
where
makes
would
sense.
the cost, or I should say, where would the expense be for those 2 individuals on the spreadsheet?
It's not yet in
not
it
on
because
there
they
yet.
haven't, yeah, they just started. Well, Tony, actually, the community officer, he had
December.
1 payroll, just 1 paycheck. But what I'm saying, this is going to carry over by the end, in June, when I present it to you, personal cost is going to be over the budget.
We should consider having a forecast column.
Column for,
You see this in your next tab, actually.
for the budget review, I'll have something that there will be what the changes, what the budget is going to look like.
You see the additions.
I see it,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's one item. Public safety, as we just discussed, I budgeted at 80% of what the contract calls for. And based on the actuals for 6 months, it's about 50% of coverage that we're getting. And also in the budget, we put in placeholder for a contract that we lost with the county, but we were in the process of getting maybe some other options. But it's not gonna be the case, so I'm proposing that we change that number to more actual and reduce the number. So that's actually a reduction of or less than the budgeted. Another is the professional services, and this line item is already over the budget for the full year. And just to give you a little more of a detail on this, so in this number, we budgeted a couple of items. It's an annual audit that is already paid for. We budgeted 27,000 and we spent almost 27,000. We have a contract with our town attorney of 130, and he's already a little over 1,000 for 6 months. We have 10,000 for the town prosecutor, and he's at 13,000. And we had 10,000 for miscellaneous, a placeholder. But our total legal cost is already at 147,000. So that's one item that it's gonna continue to be over the budget. Another one is the consultants cost, and it's due to the approval after the budget adoption. And the town council approved engagement of consultants for the Beachwalker survey, for the feasibility study for Kiowa River, and the HR services. And the very last one is in the other cost, it's for the stickers, the recycling educational stickers. So with that, if you can move to the other spreadsheet where I have,
Just a question, just to pause for a
oh, yes,
second.
yes.
Kind of reminiscent of the discussion that was just brought up about utilization of ZATEX funds. When we had our retreat last year, we talked about creative, innovative ways, thoughts relative to this $20 million. I don't remember all the specifics. When the Community Association did their survey of the community, do you recall anything that came up vis-a-vis that survey that the Community Association has been unable to do, that they just couldn't, they didn't have the money to do? You know, that, I don't recall, but that could be something, because that was a survey, and people did fill it out and send it in, and it was summarized and all that type of thing. That may be worth looking at, just in terms of if there's anything. I don't know, again, that gets back to the whole issue about how we move monies around, but it just popped into my mind. As you were mentioning the ZATEX, there was an effort back then, so.
Yeah, I mean, also referring to what Brad said earlier, our drop-in meeting today, there was, of course, also discussion about, the amenities, right?
Right.
And that, I believe, was also a big topic in that survey that you're mentioning, but then we are getting into,
Brick and mortar gets tough.
the uncharted waters of how we would do this without, spending public money behind the gate.
No.
So-
Brick and mortar is going to be much more difficult, but maybe there's something.
But I think, over the last couple of months, there have been, really good ideas for how we can use this money that also really benefits the community. So, and the police force is one. There was, again, a big discussion about EMS services on the island on a more permanent basis, which I think is also a good place to use some of these funds. So I think we will have good, solid, and not opportunistic, but correct ways of spending the money.
Yeah,
And I do think we need to take a
fresh look at the issues of what constitutes expenditures behind the gate and what the implications of that are. Because obviously, a lot of town monies are directly or indirectly spent behind the gate right now. Code enforcement and a whole host of other things are behind the gate. My understanding is that it's been an issue from Kika's standpoint as much as it's been the towns, in that they've been reluctant to take any monies from tax funds or otherwise for fear that they could lose control of access to the gate. But again, I think we need to take a fresh look at that, because I've just never been clear on what the articulated dividing line is, because there clearly are public monies that are being spent behind the gate already.
It was always explained to me, Brad, you don't want to pierce the veil. That was, but you're right, no one ever pulled that back to said exactly what that.
Okay, Dorota, please.
Okay, so with the 6 months, the budget reviews, there were, like I mentioned, there were a number of items that were approved after the budget adoption. And it's about 300,000 in expenditures that is already approved. So our budget for expenditures will increase of that. I have a couple of additional requests for your consideration. But just to start, so I'm proposing we increase our revenues to more actual picture, and that increase is due to those two items that we talk about, the interest income and the building permits from special permits. As far as the expenditures, well, the change is actually, it's going to be about 984,000 or 6% higher revenues than we originally budgeted. For the expenditures, for the new requests, I have a list for you there in more detail, but so what we're asking for is 2 new positions. One will be video production specialist in communication department.
So I would like to correct that, Dorota. We are not asking for approval of these resources. This will go its normal way. What we are only looking at is your proposal to say, let's put that in the budget, but it will still be approved, individually through the right processes, right? We are not approving today a communication specialist or something like this. We are only moving money, if we would agree, to our budget, but the approval per se is still a separate process, correct?
Yeah, for these 2 new positions we started down, Ways and Means approves the money, council approves the function, yes.
But we would, if we subsequently approved the positions, we would have the budgeted resources. If we decided not to do so, we would have a budget surplus.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify this for all of us and for the audience, that we are not intending here to approve the factual hiring of these people, but we want to put money
for
in the
this.
budget to be able to do it if we want to.
Yes, sir. And the numbers you're seeing here, for example, in the personnel line item is for 5 months. So I just prorated this. This is not the annual cost of those positions.
When do
Well,
we
you-
discuss the need for these positions?
They were all,
That's just
except
a-
for number
just a
2, I
5-month?
believe, they were already in front of us and we
The one
tabled
we
it.
have, the one in my spreadsheet
so when
is
do we-
5 months.
when
What
do
you
we
have
discuss it
in the
next?
write-up is full.
Whenever,
Yeah,
the
yes, sir.
department heads are coming
I can
back
put
to
it
us.
back on the February agenda as an example.
Okay.
Town council agenda.
I have a suggestion too, another suggestion, Dorota. This gets back to shading of this information. The $5 million was a placeholder.
Yes.
We've had 2 pokes at that placeholder to no avail. If, as we are studying to getting out of winter and getting into spring of this year, the probability of that happening really, well, I think that's something that we ought to discuss, whether or not we want to keep that in. With that out, we'd have a $2.7 million excess.
Yes.
That's a lot. I mean, I'm not saying that should change any of the decisions relative to what you're going through right now. but visually, it begins to make it look, when you look at this thing, you say, oh my God, you're $900,000 in the hole. No, not really. It just changes everything. So I think now as we look at it, I guess what I'm saying is now that we look at it in January, doing what we've done these past year, maybe we should really reconsider having that placeholder in there. But it's just a point of, I think it should be discussed because it may change, not the outcome of the decision, but just the presentation in and of itself.
Although I would just observe, Mayor, is that the discussions for negotiated resolution haven't necessarily moved forward, but that doesn't preclude using those funds for similar purpose through an alternative path that we've discussed previously as well.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I'm just saying, it just visually, as you look at this thing, these things pop at you, and, we may be comfortable understanding what makes up those numbers, but, just to the lay person who's just looking at the budget, or you just look at this, and you say there's $1 million in the hole. Well, really? That's all.
The only thing I would still ask us to be cautious is that, the 5 million is a one-time line item, right? If we would approve all of these 3 additional town employees, we're talking about yearly cost on an ongoing basis
No question.
of at least $220,000 to $250,000. So the numbers don't match, of course, but still, we need to keep in mind that, one-time expense is different to, hiring people and have them on the payroll
Absolutely.
for a long time. Just to also be cautious. Okay, Dorota.
Yes, so two positions as employees, and one position is actually a third-party commercial/residential inspector to help with the additional projects going on. We currently have 2 full-time inspectors with the full schedule, and with the new construction, we feel like there is a need, at least temporarily, for that function. And again, this would be outside a contractor, not an employee of the town. And the second employee request is for the planner with landscape architect credentials to help planning department with those issues.
We're going to be discussing that later, this tree ordinance.
February.
I thought that was this afternoon.
No, tree
That's what I
ordinance and
thought,
town
yeah.
council.
Because
But
they're
this-
kind of related.
They're kind of related.
Well,
Well, it's kind of related. The
I
new
mean, as
proposed planner.
a sneak peek, I'm not sure how, I know we shouldn't be talking about it now, but I don't know who governs in these tree ordinances. It's not clear.
Yeah, so part of the thing, the recommendation through, as a discussion of the planning commission, is that there would need to be a new staff person hired, one with experience, very similar to Jen Hayes at ARB, but somebody with experience with landscape arborists.
But it sounds like a duplication of effort.
Oh, you're talking about something completely different. You're talking about the
Can we have that
ordinance, okay.
discussion during the town council meeting?
Sure.
I think that's a different discussion. Valid though, but different.
So another request is for a consultant, Evergreen, to complete a classification and compensation and benefit study for next year. That's $22,000. Those studies are done normally every couple of years, and we had one in 2021. Another request is for $10,000, just to, if we do decide, if you do approve those new positions, we need computers, telephones, and supplies. So that's just a placeholder for that. I'm proposing reduction in the police cost or public safety cost, that, as we discussed, so I'm not gonna spend time on that. And the final request is for the construction of the dumpster pad at the town hall of $37,000, that we've already seen the details, one of the meetings. So with all those requests, we would pretty much end up with the deficit of 1.3 million comparing to original budgeted deficit of 2.2 million. And again, what Mayor mentioned, please remember there is a 5 million placeholder in there. So that's pretty much what I have, but I'd be happy to answer questions.
One thing we could think about is just adjusting the placeholder so we could have a balanced budget.
Well,
we
have
can.
more than a balanced budget.
Well, no, I'm just saying, adjust the base.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Move it down
Right,
to
move
4.
four.
Yeah.
So there are different ways, the legally balanced budget, because we do have reserves. That's how we.
understand,
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah,
just
okay,
the-
so it looks better.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but it is legally balanced, because we have reserves to take it from.
Yeah, okay.
All right, got it.
Any other questions? So is this approved?
Hold on.
Or not?
Yes, you'll need a motion to approve the
Well, you
recommendation.
see, this is my problem. So we're approving, for example, a landscape architect prior to discussing.
Well, you all are not
No,
approving,
we
you're just
only
approving the
approve the budget.
budget. You're not
Well,
approving the
all right, so-
hiring.
Yes, I understand, yes. But we're approving the monies for a landscape architect before we're approving.
But council can come back and not approve that new position, because council makes the decision if we're going to create, to hire. So Ways and Means, remember, you guys are not town council right now sitting here.
I know, I understand that.
You're doing
I
the, so from financial standpoint, you're just approving that the money's there. Council
Yeah,
actually has to
I would have more
approve it.
questions about all of these if we were actually moving to act on and
No, but
approve
they
these.
will be orderly on the agenda for February. Staff will bring them forward and we decide yes or no. But in case we would decide yes, we have then now, if we are approving this change to the budget, we have the money in the budget. It would not be an out-of-budget expenditure. That's the only thing. And if we decide not to, spend the money on, a building inspector or an arborist, then it goes into our reserves. That's the same like the 3.6 million that would go into reserve if we are done spending the 5 million on the real estate building property.
Okay.
Same thing. Okay? All right, so can I have a motion, please? So moved. Which we should have done earlier, but I'm sorry.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Dorota. Citizen comments. Alex?
Alex Fernandez, 418 Snow Egret. Let me comment with reference to the hourly wage on the deputies. Kika had a similar problem with our hourly wage employees, very high turnover, very difficult to hire. The minute we implemented a gas allowance, you talked about how far people have to drive here. They have to drive very far. Most people don't live in Kiwa that work at Kiwa. They have to drive very far. The average mileage they had to drive was 25 miles. So we found that, an hourly wage employee, obviously, their hourly wage was impacted enormously by driving here. So the turnover was high, it was very difficult to hire. We implemented a gas allowance program. Basically, at the end of the day, with the deputies, you can do anything. At the end of the day, you have to pay more. You have to pay more because they live in Ashley, they live in Mount Pleasant, et cetera, and they have to drive very far to come out here. So we did, and turnover has plummeted. We're down to nothing. Hiring levels are higher than ever at Kika in the history. So at the end of the day, yes, you'll find that the resort has similar problems. Okay, they have like 300 spots open because of the difficulty of getting people out here. Okay. Yeah, just to mention with reference to, you mentioned, Michael, with reference to the survey, Kika survey. Yeah, the number one issue that members show is amenities. They ask for amenities. And at the same time, they ask for, don't increase my assessments. So it's one of those difficult challenges that you always have to have, okay. And you're right, we don't have, much space or any space out on the island to provide some additional amenities of any type. I mean, except for maybe more trails, something of that nature. But aside, any building, we just don't have the space. But the real issue I was here for was to mention two things with reference to the budget comparison. Some of you, or both of you, or all of you almost made a comparison with reference to, is this Forgot my glasses. Sorry. This shows that, you know, your revenues are 48, 46%, you know, versus budget. It's not really a good comparison. You got to have a seasonal budget comparison. This is a, you know, a half, 50% or 6/12. And that's really, and that's why your building permits are 9% below. You'd say, my God, what happened? Did everybody stop, you know, contracting building permit, or not building permits, business licenses? You know, so I think a better comparison would be to have a comparison against a seasonal budget. So you will, and the same thing happens with expenses as well. You know, are you at 30% expense, or, you know, not really? It's because it's not seasonalized. So I would ask that maybe in the future, you know, this would be looked more on a seasonal basis instead of comparing it against the annual budget. The second item is more of an item in the spirit of disclosure and transparency. If you go on the webpage, you will not find any financials from Toki. You will find the annual audit, which is obviously required by law, but you do not find any financials. So our property owners have no access to information with reference of the financials of the town, how their revenues are doing, how their expenses are doing, any comparisons to budget, et cetera. This is the only document we see that's in the packet. If you didn't get it in the packet, you're not going to see what's going on with the revenues and expenses
Well,
of the
that's
town.
not
So I would
exactly
ask
correct.
that
That's
you
not
consider
exactly
that.
correct, Alex, because
Okay.
the RODA reports the Ways and Means every month.
Well, yeah, I mean, you report
and
here,
it's in the material.
but as you can see, you got a big crowd, and most people,
No.
you know.
It's on the website as part of the media
Yeah,
package
but at the minute.
for every
I
Ways and
understand,
Means.
but there's nothing that says, you know, here's the quarterly financial, here's how we're doing versus budget or whatever. There's no link to a financial
It's
statement.
not, yes, there might not be an explicit chapter or page.
Right, but
But the information is there.
Well,
when you go
you'd
through
have to
the-
go to this month's meeting to find the financial,
Correct.
yes.
No, I
think
understand
that
your point.
You
I'm just
understand
saying,
my point.
I
That's what
just want to,
so
you know,
I
make
would
it-
ask that you consider that. I think you should consider that should be a lot easier for people to link and find the financials of the town of Key Island.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
I just wanted to counter so that people understand it's not that we are hiding anything, and it's not on the website.
I didn't say you're hiding
It's
anything,
not
Doctor.
as right into the face or approachable as you wish to be.
I didn't
That's
say you're hiding anything. I think it would be in the best interest of all of our property owners if they have easy access on the webpage to the financials. There should be an item that says financials and.
I think it's a good suggestion. It would be an easy add.
Yeah, I agree.
And we should consider doing that.
That's all. Thank you.
Larry Woolhan, 406 Snowy Egret. On the last point, actually, Michael, there was a period when the financials were not disclosed last year. I pointed it out to Dorota, and I think you corrected it. Is that correct? I don't want to put you on the spot, but there was a time when the quarterlies weren't published last year.
I'm not sure, most of our stuff is published. If it said a meeting, it's on the agenda stuff as materials.
And also for a period of 6 months, the receipts and payments, well, the payments listings weren't published either.
I would say probably for those 6 months, our website was really down, so we
No,
were
but
trying to update it.
Well.
But we can,
Okay,
but, yeah.
okay, but facts are facts. The town, in my view, has to be better at providing transparency.
Can I please just
Please, yeah.
answer your question? The receipts and the payments to the town, they not published anywhere. They only shown in total in the financial statements. I cannot show how much all businesses are paying the town. That's not public knowledge, that
This
information.
would not be appropriate.
No, but there is actually a legal requirement for receipts and payments.
No, only checks, only payments.
Okay, I'll come back to you on that one.
I know because you already asked me about this. And
Yeah, I know, you checked, but I still think, if you look at Seabrook, for example, there is huge clarity in terms of the financial position. There's a lot more than the town publishes. The town, you know, through the Ways and Means minutes, Alex is right. No one looks at it, I'm sure. I mean, most people aren't bothered, but maybe there's sad people like myself and Alex are. Anyway, you're right about the 5 million. for the property, but that wasn't the only placeholder. I would make a plea that during this, I mean, I remember other placeholders in the budget. I would make a plea that when you prepare the budget this year, you flag the placeholders as a separate item, so these can be tracked and they can't be spent, you know, without due consideration again by the board. On SATAX, again, I think I've been pressing Kika to apply for SATAX funding from the town for well over a year now. They've got legal opinion, which says there's a risk. You mentioned the Vale. I could go out, I'm sure, and get a different legal opinion, to be honest with you. I think everything's about a balance. And I do think, personally, that Kika should actually utilize SATAX more. Again, if you look at Seabrook, the only amount of their SATAX funding that goes outside of Seabrook is a donation to St. John's. Everything else they spend, and you've got to bear in mind, they're a totally private entity. So they're smart about using SATAX funds. As I say, just nothing goes to Freshfields. As I say, the only thing that goes outside is the St. John's donation. So I would appeal for you to, well, for Kika again, to look at that. And then finally, you know, police, we've not had the same level of policing, I think it's fair to say, in the last 6 months that we have had previously. I understand there are reasons for that, but if I don't give someone a pay rise for 3 years, they're not going to come work for me. I mean, my understanding is the 40 has been in place for 3 or 4 years. So how can you expect people to come and work? I mean, yes, they probably drive their police cars, they don't have gasoline to pay, but, you know, actually, if I was a policeman, I'd prefer to work here than downtown Charleston or North Charleston, for example. But again, if you leave the pay $40, it doesn't seem worth the trip. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay, any other citizen comments? That doesn't seem to be the case. Members of the Ways and Means Committee, any comments that you would wish to make? Mayor? Nope. Russ? Brad? Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.